In JavaScript, a promise is an object that represents the eventual result, whether successful or not, of an asynchronous operation, allowing you to handle the outcome in a structured way. Let's take a look at why we need promises. Imagine we have a function, getWeather, that makes a call to an API and returns the weather. In this example, we'll use setTimeout to simulate the delay of making an API call. If you want to learn more about setTimeout, check out the link in the description. Back to our example. Our function will return the string sunny after 1 second. Now, if we store the weather in a variable and immediately try to log it to the console, we'll get undefined. But why is that? Well, that's because setTimeout is asynchronous. It doesn't stop the rest of the code from running while it waits. So when you try to log the weather right after calling getWeather, the setTimeout hasn't finished yet, leaving the variable undefined. This is the same situation with a real API call. We need to wait for the response. So let's solve this with promises. First, we need to understand how promises work. There are two sides to a promise, the maker and the receiver. In our case, the getWeather function is the promise maker. It will return a new promise object. This object takes a function with two parameters, resolve and reject. Inside that function is where we run our asynchronous code, which in our example is the setTimeout. On the other side, we have the promise receiver. When we call getWeather, we can use the .then method to handle the data sent by the promise. Inside our then method, we pass a function that will handle our data. For now, let's just log the data to the console. However, if we run this code, we won't see anything logged. Why? Well, promises have three states: pending, fulfilled, and rejected. If we don't call the resolve or reject functions, the promise stays in the pending state forever, which is essentially the state where we are waiting for the result. Once we call the resolve function, passing it sunny, the resolve function changes the promise's state to fulfilled and passes the data to the then method. So we'll see sunny logged to the console after 1 second. But what happens if the API returns an error? That's where reject comes in. If we switch resolve to reject and run the code, nothing happens. To handle a rejected promise, we use the catch method. It works in essentially the same way as the then method. When the reject function is called, the promise's state is changed to rejected and the data is passed to the catch method. Now, when we run the code, the error message is logged through the catch block. In reality, our promise function would check the API response. If it returns status 200, which means success, we'd resolve the data, otherwise we'd reject it. Let's go back to resolving sunny for now. We can also chain promises. For example, if we had another function that returns a promise called getIcon, which takes the weather string and returns a weather icon, we could add another then after getWeather. This then method would call getIcon, and then we could add one more then method to log the icon, and a catch method to handle any errors. When we run this, we'll see the sun icon logged. But how does getIcon know what was returned by getWeather if we never passed anything to it? Well, in promise chaining, whatever value is returned from the first function is automatically passed to the second function as a parameter. Now, if we change sunny to hail, since we don't have an icon for hail, the getIcon function will reject the promise, and our catch block will log our error message. And that's a wrap on promises. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, happy coding.